Okay. Good evening. We're going to be learning tonight Maseches Eruvin Daf Ayin. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight the tragedy of recent, and we will be learning the Ilui Nishmas Rus Chai Moria Bas Aryeh Levi Yosef. These types of tragedies are of a magnitude that very, very few people in the world can comprehend. Thankfully, very few can comprehend. And I hope that her neshama has a tremendous aliyah and that her family has the chizuk to navigate a very difficult time that is not just the length of Shiva, but is something that takes many years to navigate. And I hope that they have all of the support that they need. I'm sure they are reeling, and at the same time, we should be rallying behind them to support as much as is reasonable and as much as we can. So we will be learning Maseches Ayin tonight. We're starting at the Mishnah, 2/3 of the way down on Maseches Amud Beis. If I had to give a silver bullet about what we're learning about tonight, what we're going to be learning about is the scope of bittul, because we've been talking about what happens if someone forgets to be ma'arev, so then we allow for bittul under certain circumstances. What if two people forgot to be ma'arev? What if two people were ma'arev? Can they help two others who forgot to be ma'arev? Can they help one other person who forgot to be ma'arev? So there's a lot of different iterations of what this could look like, and we will be dealing with a lot of those iterations tonight, certainly on the Ayin Aleph, Amud Aleph toward the bottom. But let's first get started with the Mishnah, again, as mentioned on Samech Tes Amud Beis. Here we go. The Mishnah writes, Anshe Chatzer, Sheshachach Echad Mehen Velo Irev. So let's say you have a whole number of people who live in a particular Chatzer, and one person forgot and he did not make an Eruv. So then, without any interventions, what would be the din? The din is that Beiso Aser Milahachnisu Milahotzi Lo Velahem, his house, the house that had no Eruv, no one is allowed to carry in and out of that house. V'shelahem, but other people's homes, mutarim lo v'lahem. He can go into someone else's house. Let's say I'm the one who was shochech. I forgot to be. I can go into your house and carry in and out of your house. And you can go into my house, but cannot carry in and out of my house. So basically, there's just a clean line in the sand. Everything in my house is usher for everyone. Everything in your house is mutter for everyone. We're going to analyze this more today. Next case in the Mishnah, we are 3 lines into the wide lines. Nasnu lo rishusan hu mutter v'hein asurin. If nasnu lo rishusan, if others were mevatel for the sake of this person, the language of nasnu in our Mishnah will be a language of bittul. Nasnu lo rishusan, if others were mevatel so that I could then carry, so then hu mutter, it's mutter for me, you gave me your property. But the hein asurin, because you were mevatel that chatzer to me, so now I can carry there, but you can't carry there because you gave me your property. Next case in the Mishnah, hayu shnayim. This is a little difficult to understand without Rashi. There's just a lot of material tonight. It's going to take time to get through, so I'm going to skip the Rashi's inside. The case of hayu shnayim is, let's say that there were 10 people who lived there and 2 people were not me'arev. So there were 2 people left who were not me'arev. Then asurin ze al ze. Those 2 people are forbidden from one another. So again, let's say families 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 all did their Eruvs. But families 9 and 10 were left out in the dark. So then under those circumstances, the 2 of them are usher in each other's homes. They can't carry back and forth. She'echad no sein rishus v'noto rishus. One is giving, one is able to be mevatel and one is able to receive. We'll see what all this means in the Gemara. Shnayim, but 2 people, nosnin rishus ve'ein notlin rishus. But when you have 2 people, so both of them really need bittul, but they can't work off of each other. The 2 of them are kind of stuck in a twilight zone as it relates to carrying, because as we will see, when bittul takes place, it has to be done in a way where during that one moment of bittul, now everyone can carry. Namely, all the bittul has to go to one person. And let's say of the 10 of us, let's say that it's me, I forgot everyone's mevatel that reshus to me, then we can all basically carry with certain limitations, but we can all basically carry. But you cannot leave over me and Rob. That would not work. You can't leave over just the 2 of us. That would lock us up in a way where we would not be able to get out of it. This is going to be an important principle over the course of today's learning. Me'emasai nostin reshus. When are you allowed to be mevatel? That's a machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. And of course, we paskin like Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai omer mi ba'od yom. When are you allowed to do bittul? Only before it gets dark, only during the day on Friday. Beis Hillel says only, even when it is dark out. Last case of the Mishnah, and this clip we saw yesterday, says the Mishnah as follows, the last case of the Mishnah, Mishenasan Reshuso Vehotzi. Let's say I was Mevatel my Reshus to you, and then Vehotzi, and then I actually went into that Reshus that I was Mevatel. I gave you my Chatzer. Right? Remember the case of Rabbi. Rabbi moved into his house, he moved into the Bein Ashe, and then he broke his own rule and went out into the Chatzar, which he gave to his neighbor for the bris. So then says the Gemara, what happens if that happens? Says the Mishnah, the Tanakama holds, Bein b'shogeg, bein b'mezid, hareze oser divi Reb Meir. Reb Meir held that no, that would ruin everything. Reb Yehuda Omer, it depends. B'mezid oser, b'shogeg eino oser. So that would be the chiluk between whether or not it was done on purpose. If that person was mevatel their reshus and then came out and ruined it by showing his presence in that reshus that he was just mevatel. So we're going to first analyze the Mishnah. There'll be a couple of very quick back and forths in the Gemara, very quick explanations of ukimtas within the Mishnah, and then we're going to speak about a brisa, which will carry the day for us. Here we go. So says the Gemara, Beso huda aser, hachatzero sharia. It seems from the way that our Mishnah is phrased, if you keep a finger right here on Gemara and look back up to the Mishnah, what does it say in the first line of the Mishnah? It says, Beso aser, his house is aser to go in and out. What's left out? The chatzer. So it seems to be that his house is forbidden. That's what it seems. But it seems that hachatzero sharia, that his chatzer is permissible. So asks the Gemara, hey chidami, how is this possible? Idabatel beso, if in fact he would have been mevatel his house, then amai aser. Why would the chatzar have been aser? And idelo batel chatzero, and if he was not mevatel the chatzar, amai sharia, then why would it be permissible? So says the Gemara, hacha b'maya skinan. What must we be dealing with in our Mishnah? Here's what we're dealing with: kigon shabitel reshus chatzero v'lo bitel reshus beso. A very specific case. He did bitel only by his chatzer. And per the Mishnah, he was not mevatel his house. That was the case that we were talking about in our Mishnah. It was very clear. He was not mevatel his house. So that is the ukimta with which our Mishnah can be understood, where the bias has a status of isser and the chatzar does not have a status of isser because he was mevatel his reshus to other people. The kasavre rabbanon, the rabbanon who hold of this opinion in our Mishnah, they also must hold hamevatel reshus chatzero reshus beso lo bitel, that you can parse, you can separate within your own property two pieces of your property. You can take your chatzer and have one status of bittul, and you can have your actual living quarters, your house, and have a different status of bittul. Not everybody holds that way. Some people say that your parcel of land is one parcel of land, chatzer and house. Here, the Rabbanan clearly hold that they allow for the distinction of nullification of your property, the distinction of bittul, to say that maybe you could have been mevatel your chatzer, but not your house, or vice versa. And that's what's going on in our Mishnah. And this falls fundamentally onto a machlokes as whether or not a person would ever own a house without a chatzer. This idea we saw before. If a person would never own a house without a chatzer, then the home and the chatzer are inextricably bound. But if you're willing to have a house without a chatzer, so then fine. I could understand how you could then separate the two, to separate the bais from the chatzer, and that is the machlokes here. Our Mishnah holding of the opinion that one can be mevatel one part of their parcel and not the whole thing. They could either just be mevatel their chatzer or the house, or vice versa. And in our case, he was only mevatel the chatzer, and his house he was not mevatel. Then we said in our Mishnah, we're at the 2 dots, 7 lines from the bottom on Samach Tes Samach Beis. At the 2 dots there, it says v'shalahen muter lo v'lahen. So we said in our Mishnah that someone forgot to be ma'arev, and in his own house, no one could carry in and out, him and his friends. And I could go, if I'm the one who forgot, I can go to your house, and then what does it say? It says in the Mishnah, v'shalahen muter lo v'lahen, that I can go in and out of I can carry stuff in and out of your house, no problem. This is the Gemara, my time. Why? I made a mistake. I wasn't ma'arev. So says the Gemara, a lamdish svara that seems balabatish, but it's not balabatish at all. It's a very deep idea. This is not a feel-good din. This is very halachic. The afal that I forgot to be ma'arev my house, I can still carry in and out of your house because I'm your oreach. Namely, when I'm at your house, I'm not the guy who forgot to be ma'arev. I'm just your guest for Shabbos. But when I'm in my house, then I forgot. Then I'm the guy who forgot. So it's a very important distinction, and we'll discuss this a little bit more right now. Next 2 dots, we're 6, 7 lines from the bottom. Nasno lo reshusan hu muter v'hein asurin. Then we said, well, what would happen if I forgot? The rest of you are nice guys. You're all mevatel your reshus to me so that I can carry also. I'm not stuck in my property. So if that happened, then the Mishnah made a chiluk and said, hu muter v'hein asurin. That I can carry into those properties that you were mevatel to me, but you gave up your property. But why? Why, asks the Gemara, v'nehave inhu legabe ki orchen. If when I go to your house, I can be a guest, then how about the 7 of you, when you come to my property, you be my guest? Namely, why would it be that when you're mevatel to me, that it's usher for you to carry in and out of the property? But when you let me come to your house, Why can I be a guest by you, but you can't be a guest by me? So says the Gemara, because that's like a ha'arama. That doesn't work. And here's the language of the Gemara, 6 lines from the bottom. Chad legabe chamisha have orech. I could knock on 5 people's houses. There are Shabbases. I'll go to a number of kiddushes. I'll stop here. I'll stop there. I'll go to a friend's house. I'll stop by my brother's house on the way home. A whole bunch of stops I can make. And I'm a guest by all of them. However, says the Gemara, unless otherwise noted, chamisha legabe chad lo hava orchen. It's not real. It's not real that all of you are coming over to me. It's clearly not the way that it is. You're obviously not my guests. You're just trying to use the loophole of you being my guest. It doesn't work, says the Gemara. Shma mina, says the Gemara. Mevatlin v'chozrin mevatlin. Yesterday's sugya, we have an implication from our Mishnah that maybe it appears that we allow for bittul, followed by another bittul. How does this work? Where did that come from? So this we need Rashi for. Where is Rashi? Rashi is... Where is Rashi? Here we go. Shema mina. Rashi is about 8-9 lines from the bottom. Last word on the line is Shema, or at least in mine. I don't know if the pagination is different for you. Dibra maschel Shema mina mevatlin. Demashma. It's implied from our Gemara. Nasno lo rishusan aresha. That the case was where first you were my guest and then I was yours. The implication of the Reisha is that this case is tied to the first case, and therefore we have an implication of bittul chazara, bittul, or mevatlin v'chozrin mevatlin. Says Gemara, absolutely not. 5 lines from the bottom. Hachi kamar. No, you've got it incorrect. Nasnu lo rishusan me'ikara. We're only talking about that as its own case, where in the beginning, the first case was that you all gave me your rishuyos by being mevatel, and therefore we don't have the implication of mevatlin, the chozrin umevatlin. Next 2 dots. We're 4 lines from the bottom. Samach Testament base, says the Gemara. Hayushnaim osrin ze al ze. If there are 2 people left of the bittul, let's say that all 7, all 10 of you, you're mevatel, and you leave over me and one other person. So then me and that one other person, we're going to be problematic with each other. We're not allowed to go into each other's rishuyos. Says the Gemara Pshita, that's obvious. Answers the Gemara, it's not so obvious. No. If you're mevatel to, let's say me and Rabbi, you're mevatel to the 2 of us. I'll say, okay, fine, I'll be mevatel to you, and then we're all fine, right? Who cares if there's 2 left? I'll be mevatel to you. So what is the difference if there's 2 or if there's 1? And here the Gemara drops a very important havamina. Ma'udetema lishterei. You might have thought that there's no problem, that I could be mevatel to Rab or vice versa, and that should be okay. Says the Gemara, no, not allowed. 3 lines from that, Kamash Malan. And here's the lumdus that's so important for today for us to understand, a big yesod for tonight. At the time when the bittul was taking place, that not everyone had access to one chatzer, namely that all of the bittul wasn't dumped on one person. If that's the case, then we don't allow it. Namely, we cannot go in 2 stages. 5 will be mevatel to 2, and then 1 of the 2 will be mevatel to 1. We don't allow for that. It all has to be done at the same moment. So if we have a large chatzer and I forgot to be ma'arev, and you're all nice people, you all have to be mevatel at the same time. We don't allow it to happen in stages. All the bittul has to happen at one time, dibeidna, so that at the time debatel, when the bittul happens, that everyone has access to that one chatzer. And here that wasn't the case. And that's what our Mishnah says. And this is the halachic reason, this is the halachic concern, I should say, as to why we don't allow for 2 people to do that. We don't allow for it to be in stages. It has to be done in one fell swoop. 2 lines from the bottom, Samach Testament base. She'echad, no same rishus. When there's only one person, when it's just you being mevatel to me, then you're going to be mevatel to me and I can receive. She'echad, no same rishus. Why do I need this? This is extraneous. I can infer by virtue of the fact that you don't allow to leave bittul for 2 people, well, obviously 1 person will be fine. Why are you giving me this line? I know that. If you're talking about bittul, we learned about it in our Mishnah already. Inotel tanina. If you're talking about people who know how to receive bittul, that's also, we know this stuff's obvious. Says the Gemara, we need it because of the Seifa. Seifa itzrichale. We need it for the end of a case of shnayim nosnin rishus, of 2 people who want to be mevatel at the same time. Says Gemara, hanami pshita, that's not allowed. Says the Gemara, it's not so simple that it's not allowed. Ma'u detema, we might have thought that there is a case where we would say ligzar dilma asi livitule lahu kamash malan. There might have been a case where we would have made a gzeira on 1 person who could be mevatel for others. maybe we'd say because one can be mevatel for two, maybe two can be mevatel for one, and that we don't allow. So that's what Rashi on the top says. Ligzor top Rashi di imevatle inhu liyachid. If two people can be mevatel for one, asi lememar nami yachid levatel l'shnayim. Maybe we could say one can be mevatel and leave it over to two people, and that's not allowed. So that's why we don't. That's why these extra phrases were in the Mishnah. The phrase of she'echa nosnein reshus to teach us that two people can be mevatel for the sake of one, but one person cannot be mevatel, leaving over two. Not allowed. Top of Ayin Amud Aleph. Ve'ein notlen reshus. What does that mean? Ve'ein notlen reshus. So if we look back in our Mishnah, what case is that talking about? That's talking about two people, and it says that in a case where two people had, again, the case of me and Rob, for example. I hope I don't mind. It'll be all over you too. So where two people were left with all the bittul, so everyone was mevatel for the sake of me and Rab. So then there it said, because in that case it's two people who I would love to be mevatel, but I can't. But there's no one to receive it from me. So that's what the Gemara is talking about here. Top line, they notlin rishus. So then says the Gemara, Lamali, why do I need that case? Of course, that's not going to be allowed. Says the Gemara, Lo tzricha, I might have thought that Afal Gav da Amre Le Kani al Manas Lehi Kanos. Maybe when one person was mevatel to me and Rab, they said on the condition that Rab will be mevatel to. No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. There's no two stages here. All the bittul has to happen in one moment, all the way down to one person. Good. That ends most of the analysis of our Mishnah. We're going to ask one question here in the Gemara, a relatively simple one, and then we're going to get into the challenging part for tonight. Ba'mine Abaye me Rabba. Abaye asks a question to Rabba. Chamisha sheshrein bechatzer echad v'shachach echad mehen v'lo irei. 5 Jews live in a chatzar. One forgot to be ma'arev. I forgot. Now I'm going to be mevatel to you. Do I have to go around the room and say, you, everybody? I have to go in order. I have to tell everybody, everyone, can I just be mevatel to one of you? Or do I have to be mevatel to all? If I'm mevatel to one, do I just become your guest effectively? Or do I have to be mevatel to all? So answers the Gemara, 6th, 7th line, answers the Gemara, Amar le, Rabba, answers Abaye. Rabba says, Tzarech levatel l'kol echad ve'echad. I need to be mevatel to everyone. Now the Shulchan Aruch speaks about this. You don't have to say everybody's names. You can say Hareini mevatel l'kol echad ve'echad. That's fine. You don't have to go around the room and name people's houses. House number one, house nothing. Just say I'm mevatel to everyone. But this is actually a big machlokas in the Amoraim. Rabba, as mentioned, holds that you have to be ma'arev to everyone. You have to be mevatel to everyone. However, Abaye doesn't agree. Where does Abaye not agree? Esive. Abaye asks a question to Rabba. Now, we're going to now learn 6 cases. I wrote down in my Gemara C1, C2, C3, case 1, case 2, case 3 throughout this brisa. We will be talking about this for the duration of the day, and it can be very confusing. If you have a pen or a pencil, I recommend detailing which case so that as we refer to them, it might be a little bit easier to comb through this material. But the question that Abaye is going to ask on Rabba is only from case number 1. And here is case number 1. ACV, case number 1. Echad shelo irev, one person did not make an eruv. What's the din? No sein reshuso le'echad she'irev. He can give it over to only one person. What do you mean you can give it over to only one person? Rabba, you said you have to give it over to everybody. So here we see in a brisa, we see in a source in the Tanaim against Rabba that you can be mevatel to only one person. That's case number 1, and the case that we need for our question. We have 5 other cases we're going to read as a result of this source being brought. But our question really we could stop here and say, great question, Abaye. You have a great Marimakum against Rabba. Let's see case number 2. Case number 2. Shnayim she'irvu, 2 people make an eruv. Nosnin reshusan le'echad shelo irev. They can be mevatel. 2 people can be mevatel down to 1. That we know already. We learned in our Mishnah. Next case number 3. Ushnayim shelo irvu. What about 2 people who did not make an eruv? They can be nosnin reshusan l'shnayim she'irvu. They can be mevatel to 2 people who were me'arev already. This is allowed because it's not going to someone who wasn't me'arev. It's going to someone who was me'arev. It's not in the backwards form. This works out nicely. Or these 2 people who were not me'arev could also be mevatel le'echad shelo irev. Because one person, as we discussed in our Mishnah, all the bittul can come down to one person. That's fine too, if he's someone who wasn't me'arev, who was never me'arev himself. All right, case number 4. Aval. Ein echad she'irev nosnei reshuso le'echad shelo irev. You cannot have a person who was me'arev to be mevatel to someone who was not me'arev. Case number 5. Ve'ein shnayim she'irvu. You cannot have a case of 2 people who were me'arev nosnin reshusan l'shnayim shelo irvu. That you can't have either. Again, all the same principle is that you can't do all the bittul to two people who've never made an eruv. If you're going to be giving it to two people, the principle would be that it only could be to people who already have an eruv. So that's case number 5. And case number 6, last but not least, ve'ein shnayim shelo irvu. You cannot have a case of two Jews who did not make an eruv in their chatzer. Nos ne'rishusan l'shnayim shelo irvu. It's the blind leading the blind. Two people who didn't make an eruv cannot give to two people who didn't make an eruv. That should be fairly obvious. And we are going to analyze all 6 of these cases today in the Gemara throughout the flow of the Gemara. But as we often see after a brisa when a question is being framed out, Katani mihas reisha. But what did we see in the early part of this? The first case that was presented, case number 1, it said, Echad shelo irev, nosin reshuso le'echad she'irev. It says that one person who did not make an eruv, so let's say I forgot to make an eruv, I could give it to someone who did make an eruv. And this, says Abai, is a kasha on Rabba. Why is this a kasha on Rabba? Because think about it. If I was not me'arev, and you did make an eruv, doesn't that mean that there's another person that you made an eruv with? Who were you making an eruv? It wasn't me. If I did not make an eruv and you did, there has to be another person you made an eruv with. So it says the Gemara, Hey Chidami, 1/3 of the way down, Ayin Amud Aleph. Hey Chidami, what is the case of one person who was shocheach and the other person, Hey Chidami, either like acharina bahadei, if the other guy did not have someone to be arev with, then bahadei man irev, who did he make an eruv with? I'm Phil, you're Rob, and it says that I did not make an eruv, and I'm giving to you. Who I want to be mevatel to you. Who was ma'arev? Who are you ma'arev with? It's got to be somebody. Therefore, says Gemara, pshita deikachrina ba'adei v'ktani le'echad she'irei. So what do we see? He says Abaye, a brilliant question. He says we see from the first line of that Tosefta that if Phil forgot and Rob had an eruv with Michael, that if I only have to give to one, which is what the Tosefta says, then I don't have to give to all. Rabba's wrong. Rabba said you have to be mevatel kol echad ve'echad. The Brisa says no, you don't, just to one. Brilliant question. It's excellent, an excellent Marimoko. Says the Gemara of Rabba. What would you say, Rabba? Rabba, what would you say? What is the case in this Tosefta where it says that I who was shocheach will give to one? You're right that there were 3. You're right. Someone made an eruv with another person. It's true, but one of those people did not make it through Shabbos to have a mis. And therefore, who's left? There's one yid left. He was ma'arev initially, but now there's nobody left. It's one other guy. Then I could be one, but Abaye, but Rabba would still say that for whoever did make it throughout the Shabbos, the bittul has to apply to all of them. That I feel about to call echad be'echad. But if there's only one guy left, no problem. Says the Gemara, what? Abaye's like, the guy died? Idahava umis. If there was a guy that you were ma'arev with and he died, then I don't understand something. Ema Seifa, look later. What does it say later in the Tosefta that we just learned? A brisa. Aval. What did it say there? This is case number 4. Case number 4. Aval. Ein echad she'irev. You cannot have a case where one person made an eruv who was no sein reshuso le'echad shelo irev, who cannot give to one person who didn't make an eruv. V'dahava umis amaylo. If the third guy had died, what's the problem? What, according to you, why can't I do it? It should be totally fine. Ela pshita de'isei. It must be that in that case number 4, that there was actually another person there who didn't die. And then says Abaye, umi deseifa de'isei, reishanami de'isei. And because in the end, in case number 4, we know that he was alive, it must be that in case number 1, he was also alive, in which case, Rabba, your case just fell apart. I just proved, says Abaye, that he was alive in case number 1, which means that my question still stands against you because now there's 3 people in case 1, and you said you only have to give to one person. That's not allowed. You can't give to one person if you're Rabba. So then says the Gemara, Midi Iria, Rabba says back to Abaye, what are you talking about? Just because it's true that at times we have this poetic matching between the beginning of a Mishnah and an end. We see this line throughout Shas all the time. Just like it says it in the Seifa, it really wasn't for halachic purposes. Just like it said in the Seifa, in the Reisha, so it says it in the Seifa. But it says Rabba, not always, Midi Iria. That doesn't always work out that way. Hakidi Isei, v'Hakidi Isei. Case number 4 was its own din. In case number 1 was its own din. Case number 4 was where the person was alive. In case number 1 was where the person died. It's not a problem. And says the Gemara even further. Teda, Rabba says, I can prove to you still more. Teda diktani seifa dereisha. I can tell you that the end of the first half of the Mishnah, Ushnayim shelo irvu. This is case number 3 of our 6. And what does Rabbi say about this case? Ushnayim shelo irvu. Let's say you have 2 Jews who did not make an eruv. Then those 2 Jews, nosnin rishusan l'shnayim she'irvu. They can do bittul to 2 other people. L'shnayim in le'echala. You got to do bittul to everybody. You can't just do bittul to one person. They were mavatel to everybody. Abaye. How does Abaye answer that? Omar, he says, my lebeis. What does case number 3 mean when it says to 2 people? Le'echad mibeis, one of the 2. He finagles out of it. And the Gemara doesn't like his finagling. And that's what the Gemara asks. Ihachi, come on, Abaye. A little bit more of a sharp response would have been acceptable here. You want to tell me that when it says l'shnaim, it means la'echad mina shnaim? Ihachi, listening la'echad she'irev or la'echad shelo irev. Come on. And the Gemara actually responds, kasha, you're right, difficult kasha on Abaye. And if we stopped right here, and the Gemara does pause here with this aspect of the conversation, it seems like Rabba has been substantiated. And we in fact paskin like Rabba that when one does bittul, one must do bittul to all. You cannot do bittul to one. You have to do bittul to everyone. And again, as mentioned, the Rishonim quoted in the Shulchan Aruch write that you can just say, I don't remember the exact language, and I forgot, I didn't bring a Mishnah Berurah, but the language is basically Hareini mevatel kol echad ve'echad. Whatever the lashon is, when you do bittul, it has to be for everyone there. Now what we're going to do is go through all 6 cases that we learned and find the chiddush in each case. We're 2/3 of the way down, about 7 lines up from the thick lines. Echad shelo irev. This is case number 1 that we had in the brisa above. So what was the case? Let's go. Echad shelo irev. Nosin reshuso le'echad she'irev. One person, if I forgot to make an eruv and I want to then, I still want to carry. So then, nosin reshuso le'echad she'irev. I can be mavatal my reshus to someone who made an eruv. Abaye, what did this line mean for Abaye? We saw this above. This is a repeat to Isay that this person, there was still someone that was alive. This was how Abaye understood this line before in the first place. That when it says echad to echad, it really means echad to echad, even though there was a 3rd person alive. And Abaye proves from this one line his shita of ein tzarich levatel rishus lekol echad ve'echad. And leRabba, we saw this already. To have a mis, the hava umis. There was a 3rd person, the person who someone was irei with, but he died. Lo gazrin and zimna deisay. We don't have a gzera derabanan there. If a person dies in a case he doesn't die, it's so rare that someone would die like that. So therefore, the Gemara doesn't have a gzera. That was case number 1. Case number 2. Let's analyze case number 2. Ushnaim she'irvu, 2 people who did make an eruv. Nosnin rishusan, they could be mavatel le'echad shelo irev. I says the Gemara Pshita, of course they can. Why would they not be able to be ma'arev, to be mavatel to that one person? Says the Gemara, because, and this is an important idea because it really speaks to the halachic concern for someone who forgot to make an eruv. And says the Gemara as follows: Ma'u detema kevin de lo irev liknase. Maybe we should say, come on, the guy needs a slap on the wrist. He didn't make an eruv. We're just gonna let him be mavatel every time he wants to get carry. He keeps forgetting. Maybe we should give him a knas, a patch, and say, you're not allowed this week. You're not allowed. Maybe we should make a gzera derabanan against this one person who forgot. Kamash malan. No, we don't do that. These are all dinei derabanan, and we try to be like divrei hamekil be'eruv. We're not going to give this person a knas. Case number 3, 2 lines before the wide lines. Ubeis shelo irvu, 2 people who did not make an eruv. Nos nin reshusan l'shnayim she'irvu. That those 2 people who did not make an eruv, they can be mevatel to 2 others, but with the proviso that they were already ma'arev. LeRabba, according to Rabba, Tani Seifa Legluye Resha. He used this case to prove his shita, as we saw above in the Teda, that you have to be lekol echad ve'echad. And the first of the longest lines, Abaye. How does Abaye understand this line? He says, Beis shelo irvu itzrichale. We need it because of giving it to 2 people who did not have an eruv. Itzrichale. Sal kadaita chamina anmina ligzor. Maybe we should have a gzera derabanan. Dilma asi livetule lehu. Maybe they might reverse it and do the bittul to those who had not made an eruv, which is not allowed. Says the Gemara, Kamash Malan, we are not concerned about that. And therefore, 2 people who did not make an eruv can be mevatel to 2 people who did make an eruv, and we're not concerned that they would have accidentally reversed it, which would not work. And then we're going to focus on this line as well. Ola echad shelo irev, or they could also give. This is still the same case. Ola echad shelo irev. The 2 people who were not me'arev can be mevatel to 1 person who was not me'arev. Lamali. This is a similar case of the blind leading the blind. 2 people who did not have an eruv. they're giving their Mavatal, their Rishus to one person who did not have an Eruv. Says the Gemara, Mao Detema, second of the wide lines. I might have thought that the only time you can do bittul was at least when somebody was me'arev. But what about a case when nobody was me'arev? Let's say that of all of us, all of you forgot to be ma'arev. And me too. And you're like, oh no, we forgot to be ma'arev, it's Shabbos. So you're all like, okay, we're all going to be mavatal by one person. So says the Gemara, Mao Detema, I might have thought, Hani Mili, when do we allow bittul? Heicha de mikzasan irvu, mikzasan lo irvu, only when someone was mevatel. But when no one was mevatel, no. Heicha de kulan lo irvu, no. If everyone forgot, no eruv this week. That's a problem for all of you. Liknesinhu kadesha lo tishtakach toras eruv. Then you might say, if all of you forgot, then you lost it this week. Because you forgot Eruv. What are your kids going to say when they grow up? They have to know that there's a din of Eruv, and you all forgot. Punishment. Says the Gemara, no. Kamash malan. And as always, we are Kedirei HaMekil be'Eruv, because even though everyone in this scenario, the two people who are being Ma'arev forgot, who are being Mavatel forgot to be Ma'arev, and the recipient also forgot to be Ma'arev, we don't care. We're going to be lenient, and Bittul is still allowed. Next case. Case number 4. 8 lines from the bottom of Ayin Amud Aleph. Aval, this is the 4th case in the Brisa from above. Ein echad, it's not going to be the case that echad she'irev no sin reshus al echad shelo irev. If it's a one-on-one, if I was ma'arev with another person, and we want to be mevatel to someone who is not ma'arev, not allowed. La'abaye tana seifa legluye reisha. This is just more of the same, because remember, we're dealing with a ma'arev, so there's a third person here. The haraya that you only have to do bittul to one person, which is perfect for Abaye, because Abaye is of the opinion that ein tzarich levatil kol echad ve'echad, perfect. And l'Rabba, how does Rabba understand this? Here he uses the argument that he rejected from Abaye. He says, "I did the tana reisha, tani nama seifa." Here we're just matching language reisha to seifa in this brayso. So that's fine. So that's how he gets out of it. Says the Gemara, case number 5. We're 5 lines from the bottom. The ein shnayim she'irvu, 2 people who did make an eruv. They in fact made an eruv. The 2 of them cannot be nosn and reshus on the shnayim shelo irvu. They cannot give to 2 people who did not make an eruv. These are dvarim pshutim. We learned this in our Mishnah. Why is this being repeated? Hasul amali. Why do I need this case? Lo tzricha de batil le chad minay lechavrei. We needed to have this case as a chiddush to make sure that we knew that I could not be mevatel to my friend. I'm one of the remaining 2. I could not be mevatel from one of my friends. Says the Gemara, Ma'u detema, what might I have thought? Lishterei le. I might have thought that we allow the bittul if I forgot and if you forgot, and we're the 2 remaining souls who don't have eruv. So I might have thought, but everyone was mevatel to us, but they left it to 2 people. So I might have thought that I could be mevatel to you and you to me, says the Gemara, Kamash Malan, and the same line that we saw as an analysis of our Mishnah is going to be the same analysis of the Tosefta of the Brisa we saw here. Kamash Malan, 3 lines from the bottom. Kevan diba'idna debatil. Since at the time when the bittul took place, because not everyone had access at the same time, so therefore we reject this idea. I see someone has a question. Just one moment, please. Oh, it's to everyone. How is it possible that one guy can't give it to you if they didn't make an eruv between them?
Give it to 2.
Can you say it again? Ari?
How is it possible that one guy can't give it to 2 guys if they didn't make an eruv between them, but bittul does work if they all forgot?
No. That's true. Bittul works if everyone forgot, if the recipient is only one person who is not me'arev. But when you're not me'arev, you can't have 2 people be recipients when the 2 recipients were not me'arev. We're only lenient when there's one person who was not me'arev to be a recipient. That's a good question. I actually mapped this out on a piece of paper, which was very helpful just to get it clear in my head. That's a very good question, but there's a subtlety happening throughout all of this, which is that we only allow for bittul to happen to multiple people when those people were me'arev. But when the people were not me'arev, so then there can only be 1, but there can't be 2. And if you look through the Gemara and through the Tosefta at the top, through the Brisa at the top, you'll see that distinction to be true. Okay, case number 6. Case number 6 says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom. The ein shnayim, you cannot have a case where 2 Jews were shelo irvu, where they did not make an eruv. You cannot have it be that they're nosed and reshus and the shnayim shelo irvu. This is very similar to what Ari was saying. You can't have it be that two people who are not me'arev are going to give to two others who are not me'arev. Why not? Oh, sorry, should I? Baruch shekivan to Ari. This is exactly what the Gemara is asking. Hasu lamali. Why not? Why do I even need this case? It seems a little bit obvious. You can't give to him. Says the Gemara, lo tzricha, because what if the bittul was done in a way where I made it conditional? So we say to the last two men standing who were not me'arev, it's the blind leading the blind. No one else in the room was me'arev. And they go over to two guys who were also me'arev, like, we're going to dump all the bittul on the two of you, on the condition that one of you is mevatel to the other one of you. Says the Gemara, two lines from the bottom, lo tzricha, da'amrei kani al manas lehikanos. Maybe we should say that I'll make it conditional, and that should work. Nope, that does not work. We should have the words here, kamash malan, that it does not work. So it just doesn't. You can't have two people who are recipients of bittul when they themselves were not ma'arev, only if they were ma'arev. Okay, let's move on. Baruch Hashem, we just analyzed our Mishnah, we analyzed the Tosefta. A lot of similar themes came out. Sikum advarim, we paskin like Rabbi, that we have to be tzarech levantel l'kol echad be'echad. Abaye is the arguer. He has his Mari Makomos, strong questions from the Brisa that we just learned. We analyzed the Brisa and the Mishnah. We saw some common themes. And Bekitzer Nimratz, the themes are as follows. When you do bittul, you cannot do bittul to two people who are not me'arev. You can do bittul to two people who were me'arev. And you can also do bittul in general to people who are only one person as a receiver. Typically, that's true with one exception that's in the Tosefta. Okay, next case, let's talk about Yerusha in bittul. Let's say that a person, a very old person, 120 years old, owns a huge piece of property. And Nebuch, unfortunately, he passes away on Shabbos. And he has a son who automatically inherits that process. Or is it automatic? How does the transfer of ownership take place when a person dies? Is it instantaneous? Does something have to happen? And that's what the Gemara's question is here as it relates to bittul. Says the Gemara, bottom line, Ayin Amud Aleph. B'minei Rava me Rav Nachman. Yoresh, mahu sheyevatel reshus. That's what the Gemara wants to know. If a recipient, if a Yoresh gets a property due to the death of the owner on Shabbos, so can he now be mevatel that reshus? Where does the Bailus start? Good. Turning to the top of Ayin Amud Beis. We're going to go almost all the way to the bottom. We're going to have only one line left by the end of the day. Oh, okay. We got to get moving here. Says the Gemara, how do we learn? How do we approach this? Top of Ayin Amud Beis. As a general rule, we know that if it's a scenario where you could have been ma'arev before Shabbos, then bitulei nami matzim mevatel, that we know. If you can do the Eru before Shabbos, then of course you could do the bittul. But here, the death happened on Shabbos. So aval hai, in this case, kevan di'iboile Eruvin me'esma lo matzim me'arev, you couldn't have been ma'arev. It wasn't your property before Shabbos. The owner was still alive. You were not a Yoresh yet. So if that's true, then maybe we should say lo matzim mevatel, that maybe now that you became the inheritor on Shabbos, you're not allowed to do bittul. Oh Dilma, or maybe not. Here are the lumdas here. Dilma Yoresh kare diavu. He's like the legs. He's like it's so his as a child that pashut that you get it. Obviously, it's yours and you can be mevatel. That's what the Gemara asks. A great question. Answers the Gemara, line 5. Amar lei. Who's talking here? This was Rabbi to Rav Nachman, right? Yeah, Rabbi says to Rav Nachman. So now Rav Nachman is answering. What does Rav Nachman say? Ani omer mevatel. Rav Nachman says, I believe that he is allowed to do bittul. Namely, he agrees with the svara of Dilma Yoresh Kare De'avu. He's like his own feet. They say no, the Yerusha isn't as automatic as you're giving to. It's not as pashut as you're giving to. Okay. Asks the Gemara. Esive, we have a source in the Tanaim that doesn't seem to agree with the answer of Rav Nachman to Rabba. 5 lines or so, 6 lines, and then we'll get to our question. 7 lines. Here we go. Esive. This is what it says. Zehaklal. Here is the principle. Kol shemuter lemixas Shabbos, huter lekol haShabbos. There is something that is mutter for part of Shabbos and therefore mutter for all of Shabbos. A principle we are probably familiar with. Migud is katzoi ben hashmashos is katzoi lekol yom kulo. That something that's allowed during ben hashmashos is allowed for the whole Shabbos. This is not that, because this language says not about ben hashmashos. It says kol shemuter lemixas Shabbos. Anything that's allowed for Shabbos itself. We also see that it continues to be mutter. We don't know what that is yet. Continues the source in the Tanaim, a second din, that maybe there's something as well that could be forbidden for part of Shabbos that remains forbidden for the rest of Shabbos, chutz mimavatel rishus, except for the case of bittul rishus. We'll see what that means shortly. Now let's analyze. We finished the source in the Tanaim. Now we have to understand it. Kol shehutar lemixas Shabbos, mutar lechola Shabbos. What does the source in the Tanaim mean? What does the Brisa mean when it says that there's something that's mutar for part of Shabbos and therefore mutar for all of Shabbos? Kigon, what's the case? Says the Gemara. It's simple. It's you and I were neighbors. Irev derech HaPesach. We were ma'arev through an opening, and then there was an avalanche. V'nistam HaPesach. Now the door, that's our connection point, was closed off. So it says more, or Irev derech chalon, v'nistam HaChalon, or through a window. That's something that was mutter at the beginning of Shabbos. Our Eruv is still good. FLP, that our entryway is now closed off. It started out that way. It finishes off that way, no problem. What did it mean when it said Ze'aklal? Ze'aklal, Le'atsuye, another very similar case of Mavui, Shenitlo Korosav Olechayav, that if there was a Mavui, learned about this many blot ago, 60 blot ago, I don't know what daf it's on, but it was a while ago, where if someone took away the Korah or took away the Lechi on Shabbos, then it still counts. You can still carry in that Mavui. And what about the rest of the Brisa? So says the Gemara to analyze the rest of the Brisa. Kol shenesar lemixas Shabbos, nesar lechola Shabbos kula. What was that part of the Brisa talking about where it says that there was part of Shabbos that was aser, and therefore the rest of Shabbos remains aser? Kigon what? Kigon shnei batim b'shnei tzidei reshus harabim. We had this case earlier where you and I live across the street with a reshus harabim running between us. And then v'hikifum nachrim mechitza b'Shabbos. And then we got surrounded by nachrim on Shabbos. Now we know the din, that we don't care how a mechitza is built on Shabbos. Ledina midoraisa, that mechitza works, it is a reshus hayachid. However, what's not allowed? Bittul. You're not allowed to be mevatel. Says Gemara, ze'aklal lasuye mai. What did it mean when it said the word kol there? Because it said kol in the beginning of that line. It said kol shenesar. What does the word kol mean? That means lasuye meis nachri b'Shabbos. That comes to teach us a case where we then learn that it is still usher of a mace who's not a mace nachri on Shabbos, that when he dies, that you still can't change the property there on Shabbos with the nachri. The katani, what did we learn in this brisa? Chutz mi mevatel reshus, except for the case of mevatel reshus. Ihu in yoresh lo. By whom do we say that there can be bittul? Only by the owner, not by the yoresh. Rabbi Nachman, you told me 10 lines ago, that you held that the Yoresh can be Mevatel. But this Brisa implies, Ihu in Yoresh, so only the owner can. But if the owner dies, then the child cannot. Then the Yoresh cannot. So Kashan Rabbi Nachman answers the Gemara, you misunderstood. Ema, what did that Brisa mean when it said, Chutz mi mevatel reshus? Ema, says the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom, Chutz mi Torah's bittul reshus. From the whole world of bittul reshus. Let's take Rashi to give us a beautiful explanation of this. Very short amount of words, very deep amount of implications. Last of the short lines of Rashi. Rashi says, Ema chutz mi Torah's bittul reshus, v'yoresh bichlal dekari davuahu, v'Torah's bittul no hegasbo. It's like so natural to the circumstance, similar to the line that we saw above. Don't misunderstand. That Brisa is in support of Rav Nachman, that yes, the Yoresh is allowed to be Mevatel, and that is in fact the din. Last case for the night. ACVA, we have another source in the Tanaim. Echad mibnei Chatzar Shemeis. Rachmana litzlan, one of the people in the Chatzar passed away. V'hiniach reshuso, before he died, he put the reshus le'echad min hashuk, outside. Someone who's not in the home. So he died in the Chatzar, but before he died, the owner lived elsewhere. Now the new owner, the Yoresh, lives elsewhere. So it says Gemara as follows: Mi be'ojom, if he informed the person about his Yerusha prior to Shabbos, then Oser, that would be a problem. But if it's after Shabbos that he informed him, then Eino Oser. What about the reverse? Someone was out in the marketplace and he died, Shemeis, and he left his Yerusha to someone in a Chatzar, then Eino Oser, Oser. Says Gemara, am I Oser? Why should it be forbidden in any of those cases? Libatel, let him do bittul. Says the Gemara, my Oser, you're right. My Oser, Nami Diktani, Ad Sheyevatel. It should say Oser, also, it should add the words Ad Sheyevatel. Oser, Ad Sheyevatel, to be lenient even in that case. Baruch Hashem, we finished the daf tonight, where it says, again, that was daf Ayin. We'll be continuing in Mirz Hashem tomorrow night with daf Ayin Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night. Yiratzon that the neshama should have an aliyah for Rus Chaya Moria Bas Aryeh Levi Yosef.